most active there. And yeah, we can get ahead with that. So today's agenda is we'll be taking a look at panel first, of course, and the state of the industry, and then we'll touch upon 3 different aspects. So the first one will be financial, led by Eric. The second is mental and wellness, led by Matthias. And then finally, looking for a new job and how you can prepared for any layoffs in the future as well, led by Aram. And then yeah, we'll have a summarize, and then finally a surprise at the end for you guys and a little Q&A as well, so we can get everyone in. So that's our panel today. That's all of us over here. And yeah, before that, we'd love for you to join our little Slido kind of yes and no in the beginning, just to get a feel of how everyone is at the moment. You can either go to slido.com and punch that in, or you can scan the QR code, and we'll put up a live kind of like poll for a couple minutes. And this would be regarding the first poll, which is, have you experienced a layoff so far? So yeah, we'll let that sink in for a little bit and get a bit of a entry here. Okay. Seeing a lot of yeses, but that's okay. That's why you're here, right? Cool. So it seems like most of the majority is on the yes side. And yeah, as such, we'll definitely get into the groove of things. And so we can definitely get started. So let's start off with an introduction here by Aram.
Nice to meet you guys. So yeah, just to introduce myself, I'm Iram. I'm a web designer / no-code developer. Outside work, I'm really into e-bikes, e-scooters, skincare, matcha, and everything like that. Before we go over, how to best manage your finances, how to stay mentally strong, and, how to get back into searching for jobs, I just wanted to perhaps go over the state of the market. As you know, over the past couple of years, it's been very difficult for employees in tech, because over 60,000 people from 150 plus companies have been impacted as part of the layoffs in only the first quarter of 2024. I mean, we're all only into March, and there have been so many people that have been laid off, from small companies, large companies, etc. And it almost feels like there is no end to this unfortunate trend. And that said, layoffs have become a reality of working in tech. So I think in our resources doc, we'll have more links to pages where you can see that it's not just a small startup in Vancouver, but also companies like Apple, Google, etc. that are laying off their employees. And I just wanted to share this with you. As you know, it's not just people in recruiting, marketing, sales, etc. that are losing their jobs, but it's also people in design and engineering who are also losing their jobs. According to this very independent study conducted by a UX research expert called Lawton Pibus, in 2022, about 9 out of every 100 people who lost their jobs were in design. So you might be still hearing from your friends and family that they could be working as designers and they're losing their jobs. It's not just in Canada, but also abroad. So I just wanted to also talk about this a little bit. So I was recently in a session led by a former Amazon vice president, LinkedIn top voice, Ethan Evans, and he was basically sharing why people get laid off. And basically what he's saying is you don't necessarily have control over how a layoff is planned or if you're going to be making the list. He's been behind the scenes, has led planning for layoffs for larger companies, and according to him, layoffs can be, for entire teams. It could be for people who are only with the company for maybe 3 months, 6 months, or a company could decide to cut their entire research, content, design team. Or if a company thinks they want to perhaps let go of employees who are not performing up to par, they could do that too. So at the end of the day, you could be doing everything right, but being laid off, it's not necessarily in your control. It's beyond your control. So I just wanted to also share this with you guys. I think I'm just going to pass it over to Eric, who's going to be talking about how to best manage your finances after a layoff.
Hello, everyone. For those who don't know me, I'm Eric. A little bit about me. My last job was a UX designer until last year, October, was when not just me, but 4 out of 5 of my team members were laid off. So under the impression of company restructuring, even like my direct manager and the junior team, we were all laid off, mostly because of directional change, different focus on the product. They were trying to focus on a completely new product, I think. Just things like those. And it was inevitable. We didn't see it coming, honestly. We thought we were working for like a finance industry. Everything seems pretty fine. Like we wouldn't get laid off, but it happened. It was quite surprising, but honestly, it gave me quite an opportunity to rediscover myself. Took the opportunity to see where I want to be, what paths do I want to pursue in UX or maybe in business further. So currently, I'm engaged with couple businesses and like freelancing and seeing where I can contribute and make the most impact the way I want to. Just starting with talking about finances, I just want to put a disclaimer that I am not an expert in these. I am just sharing the knowledge I wish someone told me when I was going through my experience. So I'll try to share as much as the best of my knowledge. Yeah, just starting with the severance and negotiation part. Well, of severance, you get a full-on severance package, obviously, and a couple of benefits the moment you're terminated, especially when you're terminated without cause, that's laid off without a reason. So, and in Canada, most employers usually offer more than just the minimum requirement. We have a minimum requirement here in Canada, that depending on how long you have worked for the company. So for like someone who have worked for 10+ years in the company, they would get even almost like a year's worth of severance. In my case, I got about 6 weeks of severance after working for almost about 2 years. And what they had for me was a little bit interesting because they didn't offer me just like a lump sum severance option. They also offered me an option to like stay on a continued employment, meaning I'm technically not working for them anymore effectively, but I will be continued like a normal employee with them for the next 6 weeks. So hence I would just get my check the normally bi-weekly, just similarly. In meantime, all my insurance and everything, benefits would still be covered within that time. So that was interesting. I had the option of that and the lump sum. So like, because like there are so many options that are out there in terms of like severance, and please be open to negotiation when something like this happens. Because if the company just offering a lump sum payment or salary, or maybe limited options, you can definitely try to negotiate certain things like continued employment, like what I had, or negotiate in terms of benefits and like other perks. You can also leverage, maybe if you have some special knowledge that's unique to your work, that are hard to replace, you could probably have more leverage to ask for more, like even like a service to help you transition to your next job better. Moving on to the next one, which is benefits and insurance. So yeah, in Canada, we have like a basic MSP, but obviously that doesn't cover extra added benefits like dental care, prescription, and vision care. So someone who has ADHD like me, I also have medication that would also be considered under prescription medication. So once I'm out of it, I had to buy for my own. So like some companies, like I mentioned, even once your employment ended, they do not just end your benefits right off the bat. I think they usually give like a couple days or like a week or two, depending on how they would like it. So please check what benefits they give you to continue with. And you will also have options for your group benefits. If it's like if you have a family and you have multiple beneficiaries, it might also apply for all of them. But please note that if you do continue on and you want all these benefits after that certain date, you will need to explore an alternative health option or insurance option, or usually the insurance company gives you the option to continue with them, but you'll have to pay the insurance by yourself. The company will not pay for you. So maybe it's a great option for you to join your spouse's plan if possible. The next part I want to emphasize on is the employment insurance. In Canada, we have employment insurance when we're laid off once our employment is terminated with no specific reason, Canadian government helps us by giving us employment insurance, which basically provides temporary financial assistance to us with no fault our own. So with this one, I think the maximum yearly insurable earnings right now is about a little bit over $60,000. So if you were earning about more than $60,000, then you can probably receive the maximum amount, which is $668 per week. It's not a lot per se, but it's kind of nice to have that kind of a support while we're in the middle of transitioning or figuring things out or moving to a new job, like to pay the bills, to pay the rent. It can cover something. But like even the government, like once you're employed, gives you added benefits on some certain bills and taxes, which I'll touch on in a bit. The next part I want to talk about is your RRSP account transfers. For those coming from US, it's the 401k version in Canada. But RRSP, we have, in our case, we have a certain amount that is deposit, like, especially in my company, we had something called sorry, something called as RRSP deposit transfer matching. So once we can, like, for example, I would say like I want to put 3% of my salary into my RSP. My company is going to match that by adding another 3%. So I'm technically getting a 3% more. And obviously our RSP account, there's no taxation on that. So it's great to keep that. But once your employment is terminated, the company usually, moving back a little bit, when I was employed, they set up that RRSP account with a specific financial institution. I didn't have my own. So once my employment was terminated, I had an option to either continue with them or take that money and transfer it somewhere else. So make sure to look at that, because otherwise, if you have any plans like you want to invest that money into your house or maybe some other investments, it probably is better to just transfer that out to put it somewhere with your financial advisor. Like, make sure to talk that through and make sure you get the details of all that from your employer before and your HR before just like cutting all contact. Talking about cutting off all contact, it's probably best to still have contacts with them. Like, they would really help with HR support. Usually when you're having the call or you're having that layoff message or something, they usually add one HR person dedicated to you to have all your needs, to sort out all your needs. That will be all your tax and pay stubs. So make sure to have access to all your pay stubs and your T4s. I know tax season's coming, so we got to have all our T4s to put it down. And even sometimes, like our company, most of the time, the company just sends the T4 records to the government for you, so you don't have to keep track of all of them. But it's definitely very important to make sure that that transition happens before you cut off all contact. Otherwise, you're gonna have to reach out to them, and HR could take some time. Some people in the HR could even be laid off, so that your previous contact may not even be valid anymore. So it's always a good idea to keep multiple HR contacts for this. So maintain a positive relationship with the HR department, because they would help. They will come in handy a lot more than you think initially. Like, I know when you receive the news, it's very disheartening and you don't want to hear anything from them anymore. But like, having that contact in HR will definitely be helpful in the long run. They could also help make you understand all your severance package and even set the negotiation terms even better. So make sure to get all that. And finally, the stock options. I personally don't have experience in this, but I hear from people that do. They usually have the option to sell the stocks that they got from the company back to the company for that set price or the market price or a special price they would set. So if your company stocks were even like almost vested and you got laid off, you could probably negotiate that, and you probably have a lot of room to negotiate in what price you want to sell it. So that's something to keep in mind. But apart from that, that was all I had in my experience for my finances when I got laid off. Maybe anyone from the audience would like to share of some things, like their experience about finance that I might have missed as per the previous slides.
Yes, Abhishek.
Yeah, I can share. I think that's sort of a similar experience I had as well. I think I was lucky that there was more than generous offer of 2 months severance that I was able to get, even though I was at the company for a year and a half actually. And yeah, like you said, the benefits that I noticed did last for 3 months after, even though the severance was for 2 months. I'm not sure exactly what that was, what the reason was for that. But also, I did notice that, yeah, I think one thing that's really important is with the pension plan or the RRSP that you have, it's important that you are able to contact whoever it is, whether it's, in my case, it was with Sun Life, so I was able to, because it's a really long process that it takes to move out of a pension plan and then put it either in your own RRSP, whether it's with an institution like Wealthsimple or so on and so forth. Because I think it took a month and a half to get the money transfer over, and if not, I think they just kind of put it in one of their plans with the company you were before. So yeah, I think it's really important to do that. And yeah, I think for the most part, that's I think the gist of it when it comes to finance that I experienced.
Cool. Thank you very much for sharing your experience. Is there anyone else?
I don't mind going if you guys would love to hear.
Go ahead, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm probably a unique case in the sense that I've actually had this experience multiple times now. I've actually had it in multiple countries on top of it. What I can specify for Canada, one thing I don't know if you mentioned, I think you didn't mention, but there is a 9 months limit to EI. So my last layoff actually happened in February last year. I've had multiple interviews and all that, but I mean, just to specify, there is a limit, time limit, not just the amount limit, in order for how long EI lasts. And after that, you're basically on your own. As far as insurance, I mean, I've had my own experience with that. My insurance for my company lasted, I think it was 2 months. My severance actually lasted longer than that. I was lucky enough, I got a 3 month um, severance because actually I had a bonus included. So it's funny, I actually got a bonus and then I got laid off the week after. But that's how life goes. But yeah, I mean, I think you covered most of it. Just wanted to add that 9 month limit on top of it.
Right. Yeah.
For
Thanks.
sure.
Thanks a lot for adding
Thank
that,
you very much.
Himanshu. I had that in my slide, but I was not able to touch on that. But another FYI to that is like, depending on which province you're in, it's different how long it is. So make sure to check that as well.
I also can share a little bit. I'm new to Canada and I haven't experienced laid off before in Canada, so I just went ahead and called the support line. That's why I wrote in the chat that it's actually very helpful because there's a lot of little things. First of all, they do expect you to spend the severance, and like for example, my severance included unused vacation, and they still put that sum towards my severance and like, well, you're good for a week or two or for a couple of months, let's say, with that money, and after that they have a week of a break and only after that they start to pay you. And then they said that they give you 3 months for actively looking in your industry. So basically you need to have proof of actually applying to jobs. They said they don't necessarily ask every candidate to do this, but they store this information for 5 years, like your file, and you could be reached out in the period of those 5 years and ask for proof that you've been actively searching during the time. You're also not technically allowed to leave the country because if there's a trace of you being outside of Canada, that means that you're not ready to work in Canada in those weeks, and you will not be getting any any benefits for those weeks. Be mindful of that. If you're planning some vacations, you will not be compensated for that time. And after that, after 3 months, they want you to start applying for jobs outside of your scope, like not necessarily matching with your previous role, and you need to have proof of that. They say that they don't necessarily want you to take the job, but they need a proof that you applied. So just keep in mind that they want you to have all the receipts and they might ask for them later. That's the hints that I got from the support agent, but in general, they were super nice and they explained everything and they're super supportive.
Yeah, thanks for
That's
sharing
great.
that.
Thanks for sharing. Yeah, that's a really good point, especially for those who are new to Canada. There's definitely a lot that goes on with employment benefits and all that. And so, as much as we have enough time over here, I do strongly recommend you also do your research outside as well if you're in a similar scenario. Yeah, if there's no one else sharing, we'll have more time to have the audience contribute, but we can definitely move on to the next section. And this will be the mental health section, which is led by Matthias.
Awesome. Okay. Thanks so much for sharing. Yeah, I'm Matthias. I'm a UX researcher, but I'm also a Kung Fu, Tai Chi, Qigong teacher, and certified personal trainer. So, mental health. I actually obviously, as many of you have gone through layoffs, and me personally too. At least last time I got laid off, felt very terrible. I had to at least struggle with a lot of anxiety and other emotions that came up throughout that time, especially right after, right? So it's definitely not an easy moment. And I think one big chunk of dealing with that situation is mental health, is to stay sane and centered, right? Which not always going to work, at least in my experience. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. This is just a little bit overview. When we talk about mental health awareness, I want us to get like a clear picture about that is more than one thing. It's not just the emotional part we have to look at, but right, which is like the mental health part, but it's also like the spiritual, like right, how do we give sense and purpose to our life, right? Meaning, the intellectual part where we recognize our creative abilities and find ways to expand knowledge and skills. Physical wellness, right, where we talk about our physical activity, diet, sleep, nutrition. These all things matter to be holistically well, right? Same as with environmental, like a good example is like, for me at least, when I a few years back got laid off, I clean up everything in my house to create a good environment for myself to stay mentally on top and not create more chaos than already is happening in my mind, right? Another would be financially, which is like, we just talked about it. And one part is like to be on top of that, besides the emotional impact, but also to think about the future, which is kind of really hard in this uncertain moment, right? Obviously, all this is around the occupational wellness, because laying off also maybe helps you to find, there's many things connect, find new purpose for you, or it's a space where you can find a new purpose, a new meaning for you to go forward in your occupation. Maybe you find ways to reskill yourself and find something different to do further on, or something better, right? And last but not least, which is also really important, I go a little bit more into this, is like the social wellness, right? To have a deep sense of connection, belonging, and hopefully a well-developed support system, which you really, really need when as they say, shit hits the fan. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Woo. Okay, in the next slide, we're going to talk a little bit more about the mental health issues, right? So think about what can we do? So why is this important? Like the moment you get laid off, I think it's important to step a little back and observe your mental health. So you can actually, like, some people are more overwhelmed with the situation than others, but it can be a triggering situation. It can be a painful situation that you can struggle with your self-esteem. There's many little things that can like come together and make it even harder for you to process that, right? So one good step is just like a few practices you can use to move forward when this happens. And obviously, this doesn't. This is my disclaimer. Like, doesn't substitute therapy, for example. If you think you should go that way, I think that's really important. Having a good therapist, but even just starting to acknowledge your emotions when you get laid off, like I felt like, and I looked this up afterwards, a little bit up. It's kind of grieving a little bit, right? There's like a phase where you get angry, and you're angry at your employer, at your supervisor, at everyone, right? Then you have like a phase where you're more reflective, like, okay, these things went well, this doesn't. So like a lot of different emotions coming up, and acknowledging them is a good step to move more smoothly through this phase that you're facing when you get laid off. Okay. Self-care is super important. Why? Because that's what's going to keep you motivated and move forward when you got laid off and when you need to find this new gig. And especially if you're in a tricky financial situation. Unfortunately, since we don't have the best labor rights, we have really good labor rights, but there's places where you have better labor rights. So sometimes you're in a situation where you have to find a new job right away. So you really need to practice self-care on that. Like, what is it what you need at this moment? You need to go to these places where you can smash things to get everything out, right? Or run the cross grind up. This is for the locals in Vancouver. All these things, right? Find a way to take care of yourself. Baking, I don't know, cleaning the apartment, the house, meeting friends, go party, I don't know, like whatever is your needed, do it. Okay. The next one is really, really tricky, but I think it's really good. It's challenging your negative thoughts because they will come up. There's few people I know that are always thinking positively. Honestly, I think layoffs are, and I throw this at you, but that's how I framing this for myself. Are a way the universe shows you that there's something better for your waiting. So it has also like layoffs 99% of the time they have nothing to do with you. They are just economic decisions that are like away from like Arim told before, away from anything you can control. So think positively about it as much as you can, and this will transform also your process of going through this. And if all this doesn't get you anywhere, please look out for professional help. At the end, I'll also give you like another tip where you can get this for free. Okay, but this is really important. I think like therapy can't be underestimated. Like a good therapist will provide you the framework and the support system, at least in some parts, and it's like kind of a guide that moves you through this difficult situation. Okay, next slide, please. So I already talked about a little bit on the wellness wheel about that, but a support system is so important. If you have one, the moment you get laid off, reach out to them. This is for two reasons. Reason number one, you wanna first you want to get it out of your system. You need to talk about it. That's like, or if you need space, you need to let them know, hey, you know what, I need some space right now. Like, be very communicative about your feelings with your support system so they know how they can support you, right? So think about like to your besties, whoever did this, right? Other former colleagues can that be too. Like, hey, you know what? I need a little bit of space, but like in 1 week, I really need you close to me. I need your help. I need to be with you. I need let's go for a coffee, for a beer, for whatever it is, to realign that. And secondly, this might also help you in the future to get you more opportunities for jobs, or for new alleyways you want to go, right? This also helps you to elevate the feeling of isolation and loneliness. I remember like when I got laid off a few years ago, I just wanted to be a little bundle in my bed and forget about the world. And because the meetings were gone and the human interaction, it was like right during the pandemic, I felt like super isolated. If I wouldn't have had my partner with me, I would have been and other community, I would have felt like too much, right? So like this is really important. Okay, always. And if you're right now in a good position, this is a great way to start creating your support system, right? Like don't do this afterwards. Always try to have community with you. Okay, and there are also career support groups, like either here in BC it's called Work BC, like work like government institutions where you can find support. But like VDC, we are basically a career support group for designers, right? So be active there, make friends, and that will also create your support system. Okay, next slide. A few first steps. This is just like a few ideas. Everybody takes differently, and obviously you hopefully know the best way for yourself, but what keeps you healthy after you get laid off. One thing is really good right after you get laid off is take some time off. I know there's like all this financial stuff, see what you have to do, but also take your time. Get away, get some distance so you can disengage and kind of don't have to carry the emotional stress on that, right, with you all the time. Again, find ways to stay healthy. Can be physical activity, can be intellectual activity, whatever you need, social activity, whatever you need to do that. Okay, I know you have all a lot of ideas, and maybe you can share them in the chat right now. And last but not least, and I think that's, for example, I have a very chaotic mind. Create a routine. Creating a routine means schedule things like, okay, these next 2 days I take off, right? I'm just gonna meditate, run in the forest, go for a beer with a friend, or do some yoga, right? And then 2 hours a day I'm gonna do resume writing. 1 hour a day I'm gonna do this. So this feels you're doing something. Don't don't think of it like achieving specific goals. Just make yourself a schedule on a routine, so you keep on going on doing things, and you feel you're moving forward, you're progressing. Okay, but don't think this week I have to send 50 resumes. Don't do that, because I think that's an unhealthy way. It's going to stress you more out if you haven't done it, and it's going to give you a feeling more guilt and shame, and you don't want that, and you don't need that, right? But a routine. Okay, so last but not least, next slide. There's a few resources, and one really big resource, like we're going to have more on our research, on our resource document. But what I want to mention here, WorkBC, like if you're in Vancouver or in British Columbia, and maybe in other parts of Canada, you have the same, or in the US, WorkBC has a counseling that is for free. They only offer up to 10 sessions, but it's a free counseling session. So that's definitely something that you should take in account, and you should take it, because that's something where you get like really great therapists, as I heard, they're really good, and guiding you at least through these first stages, right? And that might be helpful to create a solid mindset to move forwards. Okay. And that is for me. I give back to Ray. Thank you so much for listening. If you have more questions, please feel free to ask me questions.
Thank you so much, Matthias. Yeah, so I would like to open it up to the floor again to anyone. If anyone would love to share any stories about how they're navigating, the mental side of laying off, feel free to raise your hand. Yeah, we have Jarrell over here. Yeah, go ahead.
Thanks, Raymond. Yeah, I've been laid off as well. I've been laid off twice, and I feel like the third one was technically a layoff because they didn't renew my contract. So I've also been there, and my layoff happened, I believe, in 2022, and I was working for a company for about a year and a half, and it was very much unexpected because I got promoted into a new job, or to a new team. I was working with them really well. I thought everything was going well, and suddenly it happened. And what I felt was like an immense amount of pain, but this pain kind of felt like someone robbing me from something that I was going through. Like I didn't expect it. But then I remember the next day, and I just went to my coffee shop and I grabbed a camera. I've been kind of like putting off photography for a while. It's one of my passions, but I haven't touched a camera. I grabbed it, I went outside, and I just started taking photos. And there was a sense of almost relief coming from that, from doing something that I loved, something that I've been putting off, and this sense of freedom. And so when I did that, I kind of felt like, maybe this is just something that I should try out, something that I would love to do when I'm older, but now that I have the time, I should kind of try it. And since this was the second time being laid off, in the first time, I definitely took 2 weeks to grieve, at least, and then the third time it was thankfully faster. But this unlocked this kind of notion inside of me that I believe that money will always come and time doesn't. So when in life there are always going to be uncertainties, there's always going to be troubles, there's always going to be pain, and the only thing that you can manage it is tools. just like what Chia said, you need tools. You need to trust in the process of the tools that you can do for yourself, and or research or anything like that. And when you can move into that mind space, and it does take time, and give yourself as much grace as humanly possible, you can have more of an opportunistic mindset in which you're trying to look for opportunities. It doesn't have to necessarily be in the field that you're in. Maybe you can take up knitting because your dream when you're 80 is to be a knitter. Like, that's totally awesome. I would try it and try it out and see how you feel. And put yourself out there. Super, super important, because sometimes I've noticed that people, when they get laid off, they clam up. But that's when you ask for support. Just like what Machia said. And yeah, it's I also have the same mindset as Machia's. It was probably what I needed, because I realized that this company could not hold me. It was a golden shackles that was holding me back. And I realized that 95% of my brain capacity was not being used on the job. It was for other people. And I started putting that 95% back into me.
Thank you very much for sharing that. How about you, Ruchita?
Hey, everybody. I sort of have like an addendum to what Charles said, like, don't clam up. I probably did everything wrong in terms of mental health when I lost my job. I was laid off about a year ago, and that was just about a year after I came to Canada. So pretty new. I'm still adjusting to the work, the culture, the weather. And at the same time, I'm now adjusting to unemployment as well. So I personally spiraled. I clammed up. I did not reach out to people, did not look after my mental health, did not look after my physical health. So probably did everything wrong. So I really appreciate this team putting in the mental health section in how to deal with layoffs. One thing that helped me get out of the spiral that I was in is, I definitely want to stress on the social aspect of it, finding communities, finding your tribe, finding the group that helps you process what you're going through, is going through the same things with you, or being a support for what you're going through. And at the same time, I do not want to stress too much on just one community. I would say find different communities who are helping you through different things. Like a community can be about your hobbies, a community can be about your professional life, a community can be about mental health. So try and find different communities, because there are different types of support you would need while dealing with the 8 different mental health points that the mental health wheel, I guess, Matthias had shared. So look at communities, reach out, have kind of your keywords that you use, like, I need help, I need space, I need someone to listen to me, I need to rant to someone, I need someone who can provide me with solutions. Have have those definitions of what you're looking for as a support from that group, and then be vulnerable, open out, and share what you're going through, because there might be people who are not as articulate as you are, and they might help. Your openness to have these conversations might help them articulate what they are feeling and get the help that they need as well.
Thank you very much for sharing that. And yeah, we're never alone in these kind of situations. And as always, we're always here to lend an ear for your side of the things as well. And so, yeah, don't be afraid to reach out to your friends, reach out to anyone who might be able to just listen to you and share your stories. Up next, we have Iram, and she'll be touching up on the job search aspect of things. But first, we do have a poll going on. So this will be our second poll. It'll be, where do you need the most help when it comes to searching for a job these days? And so this will be our second question. And you can go ahead and scan the QR code or go to Slido and punch in 1521813 and punch in an answer right away. You can also share the link with you guys. Thank you very much, Shreya. Yep, I'm seeing some great answers here. So I see a lot of portfolio, connections, friends, cover letter, foot in the door, standing among the sea of applicants, all the job boards. Someone needs Jarrell. That's a different kind of early projects. Is social media presence necessary? Oh, maybe Erin can touch on that. Yeah, so this will basically help her kind of like touch up on aspects that seem to be more inclined for today's audience. And in a circle, I see. So it seems like a lot of connections, projects, and portfolio and engagement here and there, and foot in the door, of course.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing all your answers. It just gives us a better idea as to what to highlight the most. I'm Iram. I did the introduction section. You might already know me from the Slack group or LinkedIn or I don't know, wherever else. So before we actually talk about all of those things, like you mentioned, like portfolio, networking, like where to, find the best resources. I just want to touch on this. You obviously need to have a portfolio, you obviously need to work on your resume, etc. But I think after getting laid off, if you had the time and opportunity to take a step back, recharge, it could be a really good time to also think about, your career goals. Maybe you want to perhaps work for a different company this time. Maybe at your last job, you didn't necessarily have a chance to work on like design systems or anything else. And, you want to perhaps do something else. Sitting down and, doing some introspection, it's going to really help you. Or, if you need to find a job as soon as possible, it is understandable that you may want to work on like your resume portfolio. But if you do have the time, as Matthias touched on this, take some time off. And maybe in the meantime, you can also start thinking about, your career goals in general. Maybe you can grab a partner, a friend, a design peer, and then, you can like brainstorm about like your career with them. So we touched on this early on. I think given the current state of the market, there are less jobs. And, competition is going to be also quite stiff because everyone who's, laid off is pretty much vying for the same positions. I can tell you this from personal experience. A lot of my friends, they experienced layoffs recently. I have a very good friend who's been laid off twice in a row. He has years of experience, very good at what he does. He's been struggling to find full-time work. And at the end of the day, sometimes, you do interviews, etc., you show up, doing your best may not be what the company is looking for. This is an employer's market, so hiring managers are usually looking for someone who fits the bill perfectly. So now that we get that out of the way, Some of the stuff that I'm going to share in the next slides, you might have heard of them. Some of them might be new to you, and these are just recommendations. You don't have to follow them to a T, but these are the things that helped me when I was looking for work about 2 years ago. And I did pretty well when it came to the job search in that time. So I'm hoping that, you know, these tips can also set you up for success. So this is a tip I got from a previous career coach. I don't know if you remember about Red Academy, but she used to work there. And when I went to her looking for help, she told me that, you know, before having like this one generic resume with all of your information, you can have a master resume. A master resume basically has, you know, all the, you know, the information, bullet points, etc., like from previous companies or workplaces. I think creating a master resume will help you perhaps customize your resume down the line if you are applying to a job where you feel like strongly about. Again, I do not recommend customizing your resume literally like for every single job, but let's just say you get a referral and then you're for sure, like you're sure that the hiring manager is going to see the resume. Customizing the resume slightly is going to help, you know, like during the search. Okay, now let's talk about the portfolio. When it comes to portfolios, I know, you know, I guess everyone here might have experienced this. You know, you're never going to have like the perfect portfolio. You start it and then you never really finish it. But if you need a job as soon as possible, you know, due to circumstances, etc., what I would recommend is you don't need the perfect portfolio. You don't need the the portfolio with the flashy animations, perfect branding. A clean slide deck or a site using a template is fine. You know, I also included some, you know, resources for Framer templates, Webflow templates. You can even have it like a Notion slide deck or even like a Figma slide deck with your best work. Of course, it's always nice to have like a branded portfolio, but if you don't necessarily have to have the time to work on one, sure, it's perfectly fine to just have a super short portfolio so that you can start your job search as soon as possible. I sometimes have friends that are like, I need to finish all my case studies before I can apply for jobs. But if you need to land a job soon, if you're looking to interview, just, you know, give yourself maybe like a week or two, you know, sit down, maybe like write down some like case studies. Like a case study doesn't need to have all the details. Gonna have all like the highlights for a case study and then put that into a, you know, like a Notion site, really nice slide deck, and you should be able to start applying for jobs. The other thing you need to work on is probably a slide deck for your portfolio presentation. It may not be applicable for all jobs, such as UX research, content design, but if you're applying to like a regular product design job, it would be a great idea to create a slide deck, you know, in line with the design of your portfolio site. And what I would also recommend is you want to practice, you know, going through one of your case studies, because you do not want to like do the rehearsal at the actual job interview. And this is where having like a network helps, because, you know, you can grab one of your peers and, you know, we could do the portfolio presentation with them. And in our resource list, I do have like a link to a LinkedIn post that has really good slide deck templates you can use for your portfolio presentation. The other thing you may want to think about is, let's just say it's been a while since you interviewed with companies and you are not necessarily feeling confident in your skills. You can consider looking into sharpening those skills by maybe like using like free resources such as Google Interview Warm-Up, or there's a new one called Udoo. I don't know how to pronounce it, but yeah. Ideally, like you want to practice, you know, common interview questions, Google interview warm-up is great. It's gonna give you, feedback as to what you can improve. With Udly, I think we include that in our resources list. It gives you feedback on your delivery, things you can improve, like if you have a lot of filler words, etc. So it's always a good idea to, like keeping your interviewing skills sharp. I know like there are a lot of, questions around networking, referrals, how to build a network. So let's just touch on this slide a little bit more. I know there's this idea of networking, but what I would recommend is meaningful networking. When people think of networking, it's always like daunting. You don't necessarily have to like reach out to all the recruiters, hiring managers on LinkedIn 24/7 on LinkedIn, right? Like, you can definitely join free events like these. You can, make use of mentorship sites such as ADP List, Merit, Hexagon, etc., to find design peers or mentors. At the end of the day, like you're already here, so you're already ahead of the game, like you're already networking, you're already connecting with some of us, so that's amazing. There are also other free events you can join where you can meet like-minded people, etc. For networking, in our resources list, I included a link to a slide deck I presented at a hackathon last year, so it goes more into detail about how you can up your networking game too. So I would also recommend doing this. You can go like do the job search alone. I've done it many times where, it would feel overwhelming. I would feel really lonely. But if you can do this, perhaps reaching out to people who might be in the same boat could help. Making use of ADP List, Merit, etc. to find a mentor could help, so that, you can go to them, share your work for feedback. You can like have peers and you can like bounce ideas off of each other. That would be awesome. And yeah, it just helps you, like even just venting to someone about job search or getting quick feedback on your portfolio presentation, etc. It really makes a difference. I think Matthias touched on this a little bit, but I'm also going to touch on it because this is something to keep in mind. So a personal story, when I was looking for work, I think this was after like a layoff, I pretty much stayed indoors. I was just like so embarrassed, like ashamed. So I was just like not going outside unless it was for an interview. I was literally like applying to jobs like 24/7. It was just not the best experience. So having a routine is going to really help you. So if you're applying to jobs 24/7, you're on LinkedIn, you keep refreshing, then, your time is all about just finding that perfect full-time job. Like making time for personal projects or even like working on your skill gaps, it's actually really going to, help you versus, applying to jobs 24/7. So there are a couple of things you can consider maybe doing. You can consider, helping startups that might be, looking for some help. You can consider working on passion projects with friends. You can even like start consider volunteering at, events, hackathons, even with us. It's really going to, I guess, keep your skills sharp. It's going to make you feel a part of the, the tech industry again. Because when I was applying to jobs 24/7, I was just like, okay, like I don't have a design support system and all I'm doing during the day is just applying to jobs. Like, what am I even doing, right? And overall, I think the best way to approach this time of transition is to do your best to stay mentally and physically strong. Matthias touched on a lot of good tips there, and I'm going to reiterate some of these things that'll really help you, like having a support system could really help. If you don't necessarily have a support system, you can start small, one chat at a time, and then you can build that design support system. You can build that network so that you feel comfortable asking questions and feedback. And you can also consider, like I said, work on projects to keep your skills sharp before the next job. So this is also something I want to touch on, because here's the thing. It feels like there's no end to layoffs. You might land a job tomorrow, and there's a chance that it could happen again. So if you want to feel a little bit more prepared, I would recommend maybe following like these tips and tricks shared by the Amazon vice president, Ethan Evans. He's also the person I referenced in our introduction portion. So you want to probably consider owning your performance and career goals. So you want to ask for performance feedback early, and address any of the gaps early on. And then in your team, you want to probably consider learning new skills, and like show the team that you're upskilling to help the team.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Aaron. And yeah, finally, we have something that's open to the floor here. I guess in terms of the job search, we were just curious to see if anyone would be interested to share. Yes, Nicholas.
Yeah, can everyone hear me?
Yep.
Okay, cool. So just want to say thanks, Dan, for all the tips just now. I think they're like really helpful. One thing I'd like to share about my personal experience the past couple of months, for a bit of context, has been closing in on 10 months for me since I've been laid off last year. But going back to the topic about networking and the job hunt strategy as well, was something I found pretty useful. Is for whenever you see a company, or whenever I see a company on LinkedIn or something that's hiring, I just look at the people there and just try to network with the designers and speak with them. And LinkedIn, they've recently added this feature where you can only send a certain amount of like connection requests with messages in a given month. So you might have to be a bit more creative when it comes to like emailing or contacting them. But yeah, just reaching out and inquiring is something I've been doing, and I had a lot of great conversation with people at prospective companies to learn a bit more about what they're looking for, what their career journey is like, any like particular bit of insights they're able to give, and a good chunk of the time I'm able to come out of it with referrals too. So that's been helpful. But it's been really great to help with my mood. I get to inquire about all these different career paths, not just as product designers within like a SaaS industry, which is what I'm used to, but I get to learn about what it's like to be in a video game industry, agency or consulting work, medical and whatnot. So it's a kind of like a two bird, one stone scenario where you get to expand your network and you get people who can say like, oh yeah, I'll let you know if any opening come up. But again, like referral as well, if they're kind enough to do that for you. So just something I thought I'd share, because it's mileage may vary, but I think it's nice to help spice up the strategy.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks, Nicholas. I mean, if I'm being honest, like we can literally have like a separate event for just like networking, perhaps working on referrals, etc. But again, I didn't want to go too much into details, but if you guys are interested in an event like that, do let us know. But yeah, I appreciate you sharing, your experience and, sharing that tip with us.
Yes, Himanshu.
Yeah, actually, when I was hearing Nicholas, I just had a thought about LinkedIn as well, because honestly, it's been the biggest source of job hunting for me. Pretty much all my last 5-6 jobs have been through that. And I mean, I'm talking long term here, obviously. One thing I did want to mention about LinkedIn that I'm seeing, especially in the last few years, is there's a lot of repetition in terms of the job posts. So I mean, I've had interviews go like until the last round, and then company decides they're not gonna hire me. Turns out they're not hiring anybody, as it turns out, because I'm seeing the same vacancy 3 months down the road. So one thing I've started doing, and Aaron, you touched on it earlier as well with the routine part. One thing I started doing is I've actually started keeping an Excel file or a Google spreadsheet, just tracking all the companies that have responded to me. So, even if it's just a standard rejection letter, it's fine. At least I know I've applied to this company. I'm not going to waste my time. And I also track which date I applied to it. so that, let's say if it's been more than 6 months as an example, or I've had a job in between since I last applied, then I don't mind applying again. But I don't want to waste my time looking at the same application or same vacancy every 2 weeks, every 2 months, and then knowing it's not actually going to lead me anywhere.
Yeah, that's a great tip. I think even personally, when I started my job search, I would keep it in like an Excel file and like, keep track of like if it was a referral or not, like if I reached out or not. So definitely a great tip there. Yes, Francis.
Yeah, I love the discussion going on here, especially about job search. I totally relate. I think the main piece of advice I can give when doing job search is to treat getting a job like you would a design process. So you are the product and the hiring manager is the user. You want them to have a great experience and buy what you're selling. So that means you need to quickly understand what you can do for them and determine if it feels their needs. Think about it trying to find product market fit. So if you don't get the job in this specific company, probably it's just not a great fit for the skills you have or the combination of all those skills that you have. So it could be a good thing and a bad thing, but yeah, like basically trying to find where you fit best. That's where you find the best success in landing a job.
Great. Yeah, that's a great point. And yeah, at the end of the day, reaching out does always help to understand where the company is coming from as well. So like Nicholas mentioned, if you like the people there and if you like the conversations you're having with them, there's a good chance you might, vibe with them. But at the same time, if it's like a very, strict business and let's say like the people working in the design team might not be too happy to reach out and talk to you, maybe that's not something you'd want to work in, right? So it's definitely a lot of back and forth, but yeah, thanks for sharing, guys. So yeah, now we have to kind of summarize where we are, and yeah, as we get closer to the end of this event.
Yeah, that was amazing. Yeah, thank you so much, you guys, for sharing your own experiences, the best tips and tricks that could also help our attendees who are also looking for work. So let's just summarize everything we discussed in this conversation. It's an employer's market, and it is hard to find a job. Let's just be real. And, I think Eric went through all the things you can consider when it comes to managing your finances really well. It might feel a little daunting. It might feel a little boring, but if you could just take it one step at a time and perhaps make use of the checklist we provided in our resources list, maybe that can help you, with the burden. And also, I think Matthias did an excellent job going over the multiple dimensions of well-being, making sure that you stay, mentally and physically sound and safe. I think those tips were great. And as I mentioned in my portion, again, let's just be real. It's been always difficult to find a job. You can find a job, but it is hard to find a meaningful job that is in line with your career goals, your professional goals, etc. These times are proving to be difficult, but if you stay optimistic, if you do your best to stay mentally strong, and if you were to perhaps chunk all these to-dos, like working on your resume, working on your portfolio, into these different tasks, it's just going to help you so much. You can basically time box it. Hey, for this week, I'm just going to work on the resume for maybe 2 hours per day, etc. So that's going to definitely help you. And yeah, I guess that's it for our, event. We also have our resources doc that I shared. I can share it again. You can take a look at some of the resources we left in the chat in our slides. So these are completely free, and you can always reference these.
Yeah, and finally, do have kind of like a little poll to kind of grasp what the audience is thinking as well. So we do have a final slide of poll over here regarding the event. And so as we get there, what was the biggest takeaway from the event personally to you guys? We'd love to hear your thoughts regarding this. And, you know, it's a little refresher as well for everyone. So that's slide.com, and that's the number, or you can always scan the QR code. And it comes in a little word cloud, so it's like really cute once everyone's like punching in there. With the resource list, it goes pretty hard, right? Yeah. We took some time to compile that, but you know, definitely all for you guys. Mm. Mm. You know, feeling alone. That's true. That's true. You know, while we are a group of, you know, 50 large here, we definitely represent just a fraction of what's been happening around us today. And, you know, the sentiment is reflected in many industries, not just in tech and design. And so, you know, we're definitely not alone in this, but it is nice to know that that's the case. World's change fast. Yeah, that's true. Well, it's a good thing we're in an industry that moves fast too, right? And good. Yeah, I guess at the end we do have a bit of a announcement. And so to really follow up this event, we do have an upcoming event regarding some toolkits in order to survive layoffs here. It's another free event that's by us that's going to be happening in about a week or 2 weeks time on the 14th. And yeah, basically what it's going to be a more hands-on workshop to really equip you with a direction to deal better with layoffs. It's a lot of like meaningful discussions and a lot of stuff, so make sure to join us in that event with the links in the chat. And yeah, that'll be happening on March 14th with Jarrell. And in case if you have any more questions, you can definitely punch more in over here. I see there were some that were coming up, so I will just quickly tab onto that. So let's see what's been happening. So there is a Q&A. And yeah, feel free, anyone from today's team, to join. I guess the first question was up here. So how did you get the next job after the layoff? Well, that's a general one, but you know, anyone can jump in. Everyone
I can,
yeah, sure.
as an example, I don't know, like, I think everybody's a little bit different, right? So you want to think about what that means. Like you're transitioning into a different position, different industry, or whatsoever. You want to have a similar gig, right? For example, for me, last time I got laid off, I transitioned industries. So it took me like a few months to reskill, to train, to certificate something new. And then I applied for new roles. Took me about like 7 months or so, right? So it's like really depends on where you're going at. I'm pretty sure there's other different examples for that, right? But how I did get it, sorry, that's like actually how is reskilling, applying, networking. I think that's what Irene said, like really, really important. Like there is no blueprint, but there are steps. And if you do them right, you're gonna get there.
I would echo everything that Matthias just said. I would also add a part where take the time to reflect on your journey and experience with your previous company and see what you liked and what you didn't like. And according to that, what would you want to see or expect in your next job? I think that's going to really help in navigating your career.
That's a good point. Well, the next one is quite interesting. How many interviews plus assignments are considered too many before an interview becomes an unpaid job? Yeah, looking at those companies that give you like a design assignment, and they're like, yeah, we'll get back to you. Does anyone have any insights on this?
I'm just like also like an anecdote. Like I was really desperate for a job and got into second round, and they sent me like this assignment. It's like only take 8 hours for this designing an app from scratch. And it gave you this task over the weekend, which means they actually tell you like, take your whole weekend to work on something for free. I dropped out. For me, this was a red flag, but doesn't mean that it's the same for you. I think like there you have to see what are your red flags and how far you want to go for entering a specific company. And some companies have like really long processes. I heard like from Amazon, it's like sometimes like 6 hours. I don't know. But yeah, so like you need to define your red flags, how far you want to go, and then that's kind of where you should move forward or stop.
I'll add a little story about this as well, because I was given a design challenge before I actually talked to the recruiter ones, and I did it. And I even had help from another person in the design community for feedback on it. Yeah, I sent it off. I thought I did an amazing job, and I didn't hear back from them. It's like, okay, cool. A year later, I was networking and I met this person. She was part of this other community, and she mentioned that she worked at that job. She was actually their first designer. Turns out that that recruiter had no clue what they were doing at all. And I felt like I learned I dodged a bullet. So sometimes it just works out like that.
Yes, Katrina.
So when I was working at my previous jobs and I was looking for opportunities, whenever a company would give a take home task that takes more than 8 hours, for me would be like a red flag. I wouldn't even consider this company. Because when I was junior, it actually happened to me. I had to redesign a whole brand landing page and a logo for a company, like a hypothetical company for a design agency. And the feedback that I got was really bad, telling that like, oh, I shouldn't even do design. It has nothing to do with the design. Everything is horrible. It was like pretty harsh for me to take in that feedback. But like maybe a year later, I was prompted that this company has a job opening. And I was just like, okay, let me see how they're doing. And then I landed on their corporate website and they had their case studies. And I saw my design a little bit updated, polished for a client. Turns out it wasn't a hypothetical company at all. So somebody just used my design and then they posted their case study. I wasn't get paid, of course, but also I was harshly criticized in email and I had all the emails chained up. So I actually reached out to one of the like organizers of that company. It's like, well, I have some proof that I kind of sent you a design like this a year ago. So they actually offered to compensate me for like 10 hours of work or something. But now it looks like a lot of companies, even quite credible one, are taking this opportunity to lower the time spent on the recruiting from the design folks. So instead of doing whiteboarding case studies, they just give you those take-home exercises. And they all say like, yeah, don't spend more than 4 hours, but then they expect you to basically design a whole app. It happened to me like 3 times by now in the last 2 months. Like, yeah, just 4 hours, redesign the whole concept of this app. But not more than 4 hours, keep in mind. And then during the interview, they would ask you, well, we're expected to have a little bit more high fidelity wireframes. So it's pretty hard right now on that front.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of companies, take advantage of people's eagerness to go back to like jobs. So I had a friend. We were talking about another friend interviewing with the same company that he got an offer from, and apparently they made him like do free work for this really large company, and they're actually in Vancouver. So a lot of companies do that. They literally ask you, hey, we had this work in our sprint, can you actually do free work that we could actually what's the word, like launch in 2 weeks or so. That's just awful. A lot of companies do that, and yeah, it's one of these, what's the word, things that I wish would just go away. Or they would just need to pay people for their time and effort, right?
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, can we get a copy of the slide for this presentation? Yes. I believe we'll be sharing it somewhere, right, Ira? For the slides. Yeah, as long as you're part of the Slack group, I'm pretty sure we'll post it somewhere.
We could do that, yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, let's do the final question and then we'll go back and wrap this up. Is it a recent trend? Oh, there was one question talking about posting a bunch of jobs, and is it a thing where they're posting a job, but are they really hiring? I think it is a thing that I see a lot of companies doing, where they have to kind of show that they are expanding for stakeholders and whatnot. So, and also increasing their pool. The thing is, they do kind of add your profile and your stuff to their system, even though sometimes they're not actually hiring, despite saying that they are. So in some ways, it's a good thing. In some ways, it's a bad thing. And finally, I guess this is more for you, Aram. Trying to learn about LinkedIn and consistently posting for exposure. What do you think about it, and how necessary do you think it is?
Yeah, absolutely. If I'm being honest, how do I say this nicely? I don't think you need to do that. To be able to dedicate, time to actually posting consistently, you'll need lots of free time. When people are looking for work now these days, they want to go back to a design job, they could be working part-time job, that is not even design related, or they have other commitments. So you don't necessarily need to do that. You don't need to establish a brand or post on LinkedIn every single day. I think this might be a little too blunt, but that's coming from a place of privilege to an extent, I believe. But if you're able to make the time, if you're able to perhaps come up with content in your free time, it doesn't have to be consistent, every single week or day, and you feel like there's something you can share your perspective on, etc. Sure, absolutely, feel free to do that, but to do it consistently, it's not sustainable, I believe. It's, yeah, you don't necessarily need to do this, honestly. In the past, we didn't even talk about having to do something like this, right? You would apply to a job, you would show that we had the right skills, etc. You have a solid portfolio and you would get the job. Asking for something like this or having to do something like this, I don't believe it is necessary.
Thank you for sharing. And yeah, and finally, I'll invite Jarrell here to talk a bit about his event, and then we can wrap up our event real quick here. Go ahead, Jarrell.
Thanks, Raymond. Yeah, so I feel like this event will be quite simple. I'm just gonna share a lot more about my experiences when it came to being laid off, and I really want to make sure that you guys don't feel alone, and expand on basically what I talked about today. And then what we'll do is we'll have group discussions. So I want to make sure that you can network and find your own support group in VDC and other people that are attending too. And we also we have a community sponsor. Our partners at careercoach.design. I will be coaching there from this day moving forward. So if you'd like to talk to me, if you'd like to book a session, if you'd like to learn more, we do free discovery sessions. I'd love to work with you and figure out how to navigate your own journey. So please join us. I'd love to see you again. Thanks, Raymond.
Perfect. Well, thank you, everyone. Once again, it was lovely meeting all of you today and hearing all your stories. You can always join us here at BDC. You can scan the code. It doesn't matter if you're not from Vancouver. We love having people from all over the world, especially as such, because we love experiences from all over. And yeah, you can definitely check us out on March the 14th, and we'll have many more coming events in this month. So keep your eyes checked on the Slack. And yeah, we'll be catching you guys soon. Thank you very much, guys. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming. Bye-bye now. Have a good night. Have a good dinner, guys.